Welcome to the Finding the Magic podcast, where books come alive. I'm Tricia Copeland, a fiction author and host of this show. If you love books, finding great reads, and hearing about the story behind the story directly from the authors, this is the place for you. Whether you like fantasy, science fiction, dystopian, or romance titles, I think you'll find something to love in my playlist. Listen in to discover something magical about a book or two today. Welcome, DA.
Hi, glad to be here.
Thank you for being here. Today we have dystopian author D.A. Murray, and she has flipped the genre on dystopian books. Her book, Dominion Ascension, is sort of a reverse Handmaid's Tale. Jump in and tell us, where did this idea come from? A little about the book and the characters.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So interestingly enough, when I started writing Dominion in like 2020, it actually started as an autobiography. And interestingly enough, and I started, and it was really supposed to be about just kind of life lessons and things of that nature. But I started to feel like I wanted to do something different. To me, it just wasn't enough. And I started thinking about how I could talk about certain types of life lessons, certain types of social dynamics in a different sort of way. And that's when I really started to think about a dystopian novel where I could really dive into some of the challenges that, are opportunities as well that we have today. So that's really kind of where the root of it came from. And then I think the other piece of it was I really still wanted to address some of the major things I think that all of us as humans deal with, which is the relationships that we have with our parents, our friends, our lovers, our companions. So I wanted to have that, and I also wanted to talk about or write about power dynamics, gender roles, the concept of the needs of the many outweighing, the needs of the few. And there was just a number of things I really wanted to get into, and it just felt like a fiction novel could address all of those issues and still keep people captivated and entertained, but still have those core issues at the fundamental part of it all.
Yeah, it's funny that you wrote it in 2020 and we were in one dystopian environment and you just created a completely different one.
Yeah, no, it is interesting. It's funny, I have heard some folks say, "Oh, Handmaid's Tale in reverse," and it's a really interesting comparison. But a few things I would say. I think first off, Margaret Atwood, amazing, amazing writer. Handmaid's Tale, tremendous story. That story very much grounded in, I think, religious theology, right? And this is really Dominion is really about the evolution of technology that really does become the kind of the force that drives so many of the decisions that are made after just a devastating war. So that's kind of the component of it. And I think the other thing is that, I really wanted to explore what society could look like, not just about women running it, but more about what happens when one group has the power and the others does not. What does that look like? And what are the issues that naturally come to the surface? It's one thing to get the power. It's quite another thing to retain it. And so, it just kind of was an interesting exploration for me at the time.
It definitely is. So it sounds like technology is a big force in the book, and AI technology specifically. I think you work in the tech industry. Is that correct? Is that where you took a lot of your inspiration from?
Yeah, I mean, I think just in general, when you think about how we use technology today, And it has become more and more just a larger part of how we get things done, how we communicate. And I just thought, it just made a lot of sense to substitute technology for something else that, really is driving all the fundamentals of society. And so it was just an interesting exploration for me.
Right, because I guess now, I mean, technology, well, it drives our society a little bit, but we have the foundations of religious backgrounds and government backgrounds and the Constitution, well, in the United States, the Constitution and a lot of that too comes from our religious beliefs and I think is grounded in that some of those premises or thoughts about what is right and what is wrong. And so yeah, it's really so set us up in the story. Who are the characters, main drivers?
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Danny Matthews is the protagonist of the story, and she is an investigative reporter, and she has long since just had a lot of reservations around the Dominion doctrine, if you will. Her mother is a pretty significant player in Dominion government. And so, what Danny really wants to be able to do is just find the truth. She wants the truth not only just about Dominion, but also about some family issues as well. So she's very driven in that regard. And she comes across an old childhood friend by the name of Robbie. And together they go on a very adventurous quest to discover the truth. And I'll kind of leave it at that. I don't want to give away too much, but it's really exciting because you learn about the history of Dominion along the way, and things are not always as they seem. And I think, to your earlier point, there's all of these, options or opportunities that we have. But one of the key things that happens in this type of society is choice. Your choices become incredibly limited or dictated on the basis of, hey, this is what's best for you. Safety, might be the issue. And the reality is that these types of, these types of guardrails, if you will, they start off being very small pieces that take away just a little bit at a time. But over time, it becomes so much more than what you maybe even anticipated.
That's interesting because, yeah, you would think generationally, like if just one thing happens per generation and then each generation is like, oh, only one thing happened. I mean, that's not that bad, right? But then, 10 generations later and you have 5 choices left rather than 15 choices, right? So I have a question. Is Robbie a female or a male character?
It's a male character.
Okay. Yeah. So he and I read a little bit of the back blurb of the story, but in this, so women are running the society, correct? And the men don't have the power. So is she limited by him, or his presence or his friendship? How does that work?
Not at all. They, because they are childhood friends, there's a number of unresolved issues that exist between the two of them. And I think what makes it an interesting dynamic is not only are women in power for a few very key reasons. One of them is that the cognitive ability that men once possessed is significantly declined. The other part is that the majority of men are infertile. So when combined, there's almost kind of the situation of, well, heck, you've got to find a way to save what you've got. It's almost kind of like when the house is burning down, you're not so much worried about, oh, is this the right way? It's just, let me get out of this burning house, right? And so, there were a number of choices that Dominion made early on that maybe weren't optimal at the time, but are absolutely incredibly difficult to reverse. And so that's the other aspect of the story. So I think Danny and Robbie are an interesting pair because Danny has been able to enjoy the freedoms of being a woman in the society and also being the daughter of a high-ranking official, whereas Robbie is or was a breeder. He was, and he is somebody who is actually fertile, which is why he was classified as a breeder. And he has reached a time in his life where he can either choose to stay or leave at the age of 30. And he chose to leave. However, he chose to do it in a way that wasn't really socially acceptable. Because he didn't trust the system to release him. So there's a whole, snowball effect of those types of situations, that particular choice. And Danny's on there, she's there for the ride.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you are writing this with more adult characters. Now, okay, and I will have to admit, I haven't watched the whole Handmaid series.
Mhm.
But most of the dystopian that I watch are the YA coming of
Right.
age type. I mean, I guess you think of The Road, which
Yeah.
was definitely more of an adult dystopian. I read that. I really, it's harsh, but I enjoyed the book. So it's interesting that like with all these like YA dystopians, you chose to set or to make these characters older. Was that a conscious choice or did it just happen that way
Yeah.
and you wanted it to be more adult themes?
It was a conscious choice because we all as human beings live with the choices we made when we were much younger. So while there is a brief time period where you learn about the backstory of Danny and Robbie and so forth, it is very much it very much impacts the decisions that they make as adults. And so I thought that part was a really interesting part. I think the other piece is because this story is also about the relationship between a mother and a daughter and coming of age in your mother's eyes. How can you now become the woman that you are meant to be when sometimes those expectations are not necessarily the same that your mother has? Are you meeting those expectations? So I wanted to address very adult themes, but it was important to ground the backstory and help the reader understand what were some of the things that happened when they were much younger that impacted what they were doing today.
Yeah, as a first child, a first daughter child, I definitely, and even I have friends that are first daughter children or like
Mhm.
only daughter children. I can see that it takes, your mom doesn't let go of you at 18. She still has, I mean, some moms, I have to say, will still
Mhm.
have expectations, beyond that into adulthood, I feel like. So
Absolutely.
that's an interesting dynamic to think about. And especially when maybe the mom is a leader or a ruler and they have certain expectations for their children to, kind of just adopt what they are doing, their legacy, right? Because I think
Absolutely.
for parents, it's hard to probably see or let go of what you thought your child would do or be, especially in a society where, you know, being in control, being in power probably keeps you safe to a lot of extent, right?
Absolutely. And I mean, every parent has a dream for their child, you know? And so it was very important to me to deal with very adult themes. And that's what Dominion does. It really, and the fact that they're late 20s, early 30s it was also very important because it's at that time where you really start to break, not start, but you continue, but almost get to a point where you break away from, just those, being that child to being that your own adult, being your own person and finding your way, and so I thought that was another interesting aspect about I wanted this to be new adult as opposed to
Okay,
YA.
interesting.
Hmm.
And what are the types of situations that I mean, what are the stakes here? Are some of the stakes death or are just the stakes a little bit lower than that?
Death is definitely one of the potential outcomes. The interesting thing about the journey is that it is a combination of an escape on the behalf of Robbie, as well as an exploration for Danny. And they're on their way to a place called Haven, which is considered a place where escape breeders can thrive. And so this whole journey of getting to Haven is paved with individuals who are there to help them along the way. And each stop, it's a completely different situation. It's a different environment, different people, and you're constantly learning more and more about this really different type of society. But you're also learning about how it became what it is, right? And the dynamics, at the government level, at the power level. So that's a really interesting piece of it. And it's really interesting. We often pursue goals that when we think that once we get them, they will meet all of our expectations. Well, the reality is that sometimes they don't do that. Oftentimes they don't do that. And so there really is the requirement for both Danny and Robbie to come to harsh realities. They face harsh realities, but they've got to come to the understanding that there's just certain choices that they need to make that may not be the most comfortable ones at the time, but it's usually, sometimes it's just about being true or being authentic to who you are. And so that's really an important part of the story too, finding yourself at a time when there's so much turbulence in this still very young society that's evolving and in many ways trying to get to a place of stability, right?
Right. Yeah. And sometimes you just have to pick a side and go with it.
Interesting. Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
And that can be have high consequences, right?
The stakes are very high. Yeah.
So set up the feel. You said it's post-apocalyptic, post-chemical warfare. Is that what you said?
Oh, biological warfare. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. So, but they still have technology, so their grid hasn't been shut down. What is the physical or the environment?
Right.
Do they have cars? Do they have to go on foot? How does this journey have to take place for them?
Yeah. So I do quite a bit of description around what the environment is like. What is the air and the water, kind of that whole component, the climate component of it, as well as, describing really everything very much looks the same. There isn't the opportunity to differentiate significantly because, for the most part, all men are kind of fall into 6 classes. The women are the ones that are in the powerful roles. And so there is the need to control is very important. What's also happening is that there are militants that obviously want to see government change. So there's constant upheaval from that standpoint. So, different types of, kind of militant outbursts that are happening throughout the country. And then there's also, I think a lot of it is around, just showing, that some of the different rituals that are part of Dominion society. And this is one of the reasons there's a very important one at the beginning of the book called The Ascension, which is what this book is subtitled, where you really do get a very detailed understanding of how Dominion evolved and what it's looking to do, how they're looking to bring it into the future. And so it's, technology still exists, but there have been some fundamental things that have changed with respect to, there's cars, they're called autolifts now. They are, self-driving. And There's also the opportunity, there's haptic messaging that happens. So rather than just speaking, you can also communicate through just noises. So, or different different vibrations that are happening. There's a lot of little nuance types of things, so much so that I actually put a glossary in the back of the book so people could understand, because some things were so out there I had to make up names for them. And so I said, well, somebody's gonna come across this word and not know what it means, so I'm gonna put a glossary in here. And thank God I did, also because you're thinking of writing this book for over a period of years, you forget. You forget, like, what was that supposed to be? But yeah, so there's a lot of little technological advances that are kind of called out in the book. And probably one of the most significant is one called Eligius, which is essentially the technology that really does kind of assign men, or actually young men at the age of 12, into these very specific roles. So
interesting. Yeah, I have to buy this book. Is it in audiobook too?
No, it's just an ebook and hard and soft covers for now.
Well, that's okay. I can buy a soft cover, so I like those too. And this is going to be a trilogy, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
And talk about the second two books. Where do you know where it's going, or is it kind of just you'll know when you get there?
Actually, when it comes to my writing process, I actually do very detailed outlines. So I actually had a very detailed outline of book 2 back in 2024. And so, writing the scenes is really what's most important at this point, which I'm doing. And it's I'll tell you this much. The second book is entitled Dominion Anarchy, and I think that should speak for itself in many ways.
There is an uprising of some sort, led by some unknown character, or some unnamed character, I guess I should say.
It's fun.
And I guess my other question is, what perspective do we get? Is this first person through Danny's perspective?
First person perspective. And thank you for mentioning that, because this is really important. The first book I wrote first person perspective because I wanted the reader to really see the world through Danny's eyes, and understand, it's particularly the dynamic between herself and her mother. And I wanted all of that to be very, very, just almost piercing, if you will. Dominion Anarchy is actually being read and I'm writing it in multi-point of view, third person, because it's a big story. It covers multiple situations or activities, experiences, occurrences. And so I needed that broader lens to bring that story to life. So it's an interesting transitioning from one, first person point of view to third. It's like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, I mean, I mostly write in first person, and I tried like one short story in third person. I was like, God, this story is gonna kill me. 5,000 words. Like I would forget every other paragraph. So yeah, I can imagine that's a little bit of a jump. Were you a creative or fiction writer before? You said you tried to write, this is an autobiography. So had you creatively written before that?
You know what? I've written most of my life. I've always been a writer, creative writer, but just not, from a profession standpoint. And it was just, I always knew that I was going to author a book at some point in my life. And it just seemed to be the right time. And I really, it also came at a point in my life where I really felt I had a point of view that I really wanted to put out there. And so I think that had a lot to do with it as well. So
it's interesting. I was looking at, the book and the fact that, it is a woman-run society. the women are in power, but you chose to write under D.A. Murray. Can you talk about that choice? Because usually why authors do that is, and maybe it's for the same reason. Usually why authors do that is in sci-fi or, those type of fantasy books even, is so the reader doesn't necessarily know whether a man or a woman is writing the book, right?
Yeah, no, I wanted them to know it was a female for
Oh, okay.
sure. Not a problem at all. It's important for who I am as an author to be clear to the readers because I have a point of view, and the story that I'm telling is a story that it's not. Yeah, it's a fictional story, but the themes, the stakes, the issues are real. They are. And so I wanted to be attached to that. That's part of my platform and the part of the voice that I'm putting out there. I chose D.A. Murray, quite honestly. That was more so because I intend to write other genres.
Oh, okay.
And so to me, it just made a lot of sense to kind of go down that road of, if I decided, when I decide to kind of splinter off, I would just be able to have that, that flexibility to do so. So,
Fine. Yeah, I think a lot of times fiction can allow us to look at those really hard issues in a safer space, maybe,
yeah.
as well as a more enjoyable space where, and storytelling can be a big factor in learning too. So I think, it's really neat that you're bringing up all those issues and melding them all together. I mean, we have AI, we have gender issues, we have parental issues, we have not coming of age, but becoming an adult issues. So much packed in one book.
Yeah, there is quite a bit in there, but it's I guess in many respects I wrote the type of book I enjoy reading, and I like books that have kind of these multiple layers of meaning. And so I love that about it. And I really enjoyed a lot of the description that I was writing throughout the book. That was a lot of fun because I think at the end of the day, what I wanted to do is I really wanted people to discuss some of the issues that are brought up. I do I make appearances at about 2 book clubs a month. And it is fascinating to hear people talk about your work. It's
I can imagine.
fascinating. And I thought I kind of went into it thinking that I was going to probably have to really have a hard skin when it came to what men would say. Because I just thought, oh my God, they're just going to think I'm this man hater or something. But it has been absolutely not like that at all. And if anything, to your earlier point, because it's a fiction book, it's a more comfortable place to talk about the what ifs. Very different when you are, dealing with something that's happening right now, right? And so I think that, the idea of, power and gender roles and, choice and how much of choice or free will should be controlled by the government versus by the individual. And, all of those types of things are just really exciting to hear people talk about and to also hear people recount, kind of their coming of age story and what were some of the issues that they dealt with and how that impacted the decisions that they made as adults. So I love where, how this narrative has been able to kind of guide some of those discussions.
Neat. Yeah, I saw on your website you have a book club packet that people can download. So I think that's a really good resource for readers.
Yeah,
Really neat.
it's a lot of fun too. I had some fun in the book too because there's different events that take place. So I actually have like different types of interesting kind of futuristic cocktail names of drinks and things of that nature. And so in the book club kit, besides the fact that obviously the glossary's in there, it has to be in there, but, and obviously the discussion questions, there is a culinary menu, there is a cocktail menu, a non-alcoholic menu, games, and it's just a lot of fun. And there's just so much you can do to create kind of a Dominion experience, when you're really trying to kind of bring a group together and talk about the book. So
that gives me an idea. Yeah. Back when me and all my friends were reading Twilight, we all would have like Twilight themed book clubs and parties. And I was like, my house was being decked out. So I can imagine that. That sounds like a lot of fun, especially with the cocktail. So
absolutely. I had a blast. I actually hosted one of my own book club. I hosted it at my home, and it was amazing. All of the cocktails were out, and the purple lights, because purple and gold is, part of the theme of the book itself. And, just the menu, and we just had an amazing time. But yeah, it was just a great experience, and I'm really loving it. Really loving
very
it.
cool. Well, hopefully you had something other than genetically engineered food.
No, but a lot of it was plant-based, but yeah, it was great. And I think, it's just very interesting to talk about what could, life be like 50 years into the future, or what have you, what could that look like? And, but I think the one thing that, we can look back in history and say, it's a cycle. Things often repeat themselves. Circumstances, time, different periods of time repeat themselves in different ways. And so I think that, even in the case of Dominion and where it is, in this story, it's still very much, it's evolving, and it's going to take on some interesting changes that will cause people to, kind of question and decide that maybe things aren't as good as we thought they were. Who knows? But
well, I need to get on this bandwagon right now so I can keep following, and I won't be behind. So let everyone know where we can find you and your books.
Absolutely. So my author side is damurrayofficial.com. So you can go there and learn all. The blog is there. There is a character AI program in there, which is really cool. So you can learn about the main characters, and they kind of take you on an AI journey, which is fun. There's also a video trailer that kind of gives you a feel visually of what it's like, of what the story is about. You can buy it on bookshop.org. Amazon.com, Walmart.com, BarnesandNobles.com. So it's awesome. It's been probably around 5 months, and the distribution is expanding, and I'm just absolutely loving the experience. And it's funny, you asked me about an audiobook, and I'll tell you honestly, I considered it for a while. I talked to my publisher about it. I'm like, it is just like, audiobooks I think are great, and I understand why they're just such an efficient thing to use, because people listen to them in the car or as they're falling asleep. I mean, I get all of that, but there's just something about the different voices, and I wasn't seeing, Dominion translating well as an audiobook. And that isn't to say that eventually it won't happen, but I think that I just wasn't excited about the audio version, honestly. So we'll see how things evolve.
Maybe when you hear the perfect narrator, that will be.
Well, I heard, oh my God, I must have listened to at least 200.
Oh wow.
It was, oh my God.
Yeah, no. If you didn't get it after that, you're right. It just wasn't.
Like, no. There was just something that wasn't translating for me. And so, but nonetheless, I mean, it isn't about me. It's about the experience for the reader. But I felt like I wasn't seeing the story being represented the way I really thought it needed to be represented. in audio form, at least at that point. So,
Oh, fun.
but it's still very much a possibility.
That's all good. Like, yeah, because I stare at the computer so long, either I listen to an audiobook or I have a physical book. So one of those usually works for me. So yeah.
Totally get it. Totally get it.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And I hope you will come back when you get Anarchy out so we can follow Danny and Robbie and see what they're up to next. Yeah. And thank you for being here, D.A. Murray, damurrayofficial.com.
Awesome. Love it.
Bye.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Finding the Magic podcast. I'm your host, author and podcaster Tricia Copeland, and I love getting behind the scenes. If you like the podcast, make sure to subscribe and stop in each week to discover new authors and books. Thanks for listening, and until next time, keep finding the magic.